Nobel Peace Prize winner and the leader of the nonviolent civil rights movement in the United States, was assassinated in Memphis tonight. A sniper's bullet cut down Dr. King in Memphis.
Snipers, helicopters, and a massive police presence. Hero of Yo Gotti's big brother, Big Jook.
A new study finds Memphis is the most dangerous city in the country. This report comes as the Bluff City is on pace to surpass a record number of homicides.
Decade of drugs, murder, and mayhem have all finally come to a conclusion. 40 Pettis associates have been prosecuted. The organization dismantled.
Family members confirmed Joshua Taylor was found shot and killed at Orange Mound yesterday afternoon, leaving that community on edge as they worry who might be next.
Memphis was the first large city African Americans moved to in large numbers. Actually, while the Civil War was still going on, in the infamous Orange Mound neighborhood had the second largest concentration of black people after Harlem in the 1970s.
A multi-agency raid in Orange Mound leads officers to weapons, ammunition, and drugs.
Today, though, unfortunately, Memphis is the most dangerous metro area in the country.
Flashing lights, crime scene tape, and grieving families have become a common sight across Memphis.
It's just rock bottom. It's just completely rock bottom.
Fun fact, as dangerous as Memphis is now, its homicide rate is slightly lower than it was in the year 1928, which goes to show how little things have changed for some black Americans in the last 100 years. And for those of an older generation, Memphis might be most famous as the place where Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lost his life back in 1968.
But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.
Bringing the civil rights era to a close and ushering in a new and more violent United States.
A sniper's bullet cut down Dr. King as he stood on a hotel balcony in Memphis.
So let's take a look at the Bovans and the Ronnie Woods family and the Townsends and some other people, do an overview of the Memphis dope game up to and including Craig Petties, the biggest of all. Now, I was reminded / learned about all this while researching Eric Bovan, the man whose funeral Yo Gotti and Big Jook attended the day Big Jook got rested in peace. And Big Jook's real name is Anthony Mims, and the Mims family has been linked to the Bovans since the 80s. In fact, part of Yo Gotti's early marketing campaign has always had him referencing the fact that his aunt was part of one of the city's most infamous crews back in the infamous 80s, Linda Faye Mims.
Like, if you listen to some of my previous music, they're like, I know women really than dudes. And I always, had these records where I talked about my mother being in the street, my brother being locked up.
So let's start with Yo Gotti and Big Jook's aunt. Here's a quote from a court document. Linda Faye Mims appeals the district court's judgment sentencing her to 84 months for guilty of conspiracy to possess cocaine with intent to distribute. On appeal, Mims argues the district court erred in failing to require the U.S. government to file for a motion of departure in admitting into evidence her incriminating statement. On appeal, she raises 4 issues. I'll just go into the first one. She contends that the district court should have required the U.S. to file a motion for departures.
So much on the line here tonight. I'm a nervous wreck.
You got this, baby, okay? Pursuant to Section 5K1. So the family ties to the street Yo Gotti made a key part of his marketing plan was this 5K1 act. Interesting. If you didn't know what a 5K1 is, it's a motion that concerns getting a lesser sentence in federal court in exchange for becoming a state's witness after being a defendant, aka snitching. Eric Bovan himself cut a deal to turn on his own whole organization and some of the people he paid kind of paltry sums of money to transport stuff back and forth from LA to Memphis. Some of them got more time than Eric Bovan, the ringleader. And here's some testimony from Anthony Bovan, Eric's brother, about another brother who carried their father's last name, Salisbury, prosecutor. After you became with Eric, or during the time you were involved with Eric, was your brother Larry Salisbury also involved with DR Ruggs? Anthony Bovan, yes he was. And was he also involved with Eric? Yes. Did Eric ever discuss with you dope in quantities that were going to Larry Salisbury? I think he said a couple of times there were 2 or 3 going to him. 2 or 3 what? Kilos.
She was like our John Gotti, really, in our neighborhood. She supplied a lot of people in our apartment, so it was like she had their respect.
Here's what federal prosecutors had to say in their synopsis of Lisa Faye Mims. Miss Mims' brother-in-law, Eric Bovan, was the apparent leader of a large coca distribution network that transported from LA to Memphis. After government officials learned that Mims' house on Monette Street in Memphis was being used in the network, they placed it under video surveillance. The videotapes show co-conspirators Eric and Janet Bovan, his wife, entering Mims' house on September 17, 1987, with Earl Woods, a government informant. Woods testified he accompanied Eric and Janet to Mims' house, and they got $25,000 to $40,000 and counted the money, which was somewhere between $100,000 and $170,000. And then Anthony Bovan, again the brother, testified he would meet at Lisa Faye Mims' house, picking up $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. There's more videotape evidence of people leaving her house with plastic bags containing a white powdered substance. So Lisa Faye Mims seems like she just tried to tell after she found out the people higher up than her in the organization did tell. And the court later allowed her to withdraw her plea, but she ended up getting 84 months. I'm not sure if she had that reduced. Now, a quick detour into a sad little tragedy that happened in Ohio involving the Bovan and Salisbury families. Eric Bovan's father, Herman Salisbury, had moved to Detroit at some point, late 70s or early 80s, and apparently was dating a woman that worked somewhere between Dayton and Columbus, Ohio, a few hours south of the Motor City. One day his girlfriend snapped and took his life while they were driving on the interstate. Bang. She ended up with a 5-year prison term. Now, I don't know what Herman Salisbury was doing in Detroit, if he was in the game or not, but when Eric and his organization were indicted in '89, it came out that their first major purchase back in '86 was when they went to Detroit and bought 2 bricks for $46,000. But they could still make a 10G or more profit on them in Memphis. But they soon found another guy, California Tony, in, you guessed it, LA. He dropped their price down to 19. And Eric Bovan, along with his brother, got on the stand against their former workers. So you can understand why Yo Gotti's aunt, Linda Faye Mims, tried to cut a deal herself. As for Eric Bovan, he actually made the national news in a front page article in the Washington Post about the U.S. Marshals auctioning dope dealers seized jewelry. Mr. Bovan's jewelry cited as an example of particularly worthless customized jewelry. He had a giant gold square dotted with rubies and surrounded by diamonds, and it said Las Vegas Eric in it, and gemstones. He spent $100,000 on the piece, and the Marshal sold it for pennies on the dollar. In 2009, probably about 10 years after he got out of federal prison for his 1980s activities, he got caught up with a crooked doctor doing prescription medication fraud. He would pay the doctor $45 each to write prescriptions and sell them on the streets of Memphis. Mr. Bovan had already had 2 strokes because of this time, according to his lawyer, because of his near daily habit. And when Eric Bovan RIP'd last month, drawing Big Jook to his funeral where he lost his life, he was only 62. So when you look at these old photos and hear about the so-called golden days of the street life, well, really, a lot of these guys are like Eric Bovan. They had a kind of a sad life. His dad unalived by his girlfriend in Ohio. Then he had about a 4 or 5 year run in the streets. Then he had his own family tell on him, and he told on his own family. Then he started having strokes from his own habits and died at 62. And then his nephew-in-law got killed at his repast. That's the real street life. Drug abuse, early prison, death. for most people, though not all.
Oh, what's happening, family? It's your man, CRBG. Yeah, we just chopping it up and peace and love to all the people down there in Memphis. Hope you brothers down there sort out your problems. RIP to all the soldiers who fell down there, whatever team they on. But yeah, we were speaking about back in the day. We working, on this Mafia Part 2. Made some friends. What we always refer back to, he's friends with a group of guys, James and Bill, the Bobos, which we have all respect and love for. They're based out of Memphis. They're Memphis legends. Well, by 92, Pops did time with this cat, Muhammad, out of Pakistan. And Muhammad had some legal problems, had a big bag stashed in Chicago. Pop went and got it. And they, Pop got front of some keys and he got back on his feet. Everything we wanted came to reality. And
that was heroin, though.
Yeah. They got some real hustlers down there in Memphis. All the team we work with down there, those guys would stand up. They always held their weight. During that Pakistani run, when they helped move a very large bag, when I'm talking about a bag,
Tens of millions.
Yeah, the whole run, tens of millions. But just good people down there in Memphis. So to the whole team down there, to show you how highly Pops thought of them, I think when he first got out and he was introducing me to the people in his world, they had to be either one or two on the list. These are some guys you gotta know, because these are real guys.
Oh, the Bobos at the house in Detroit?
Yeah. In Palmer Woods, and back.
Oh, so they were tied. There's a big Memphis-Detroit connection.
Very big. They did all kind of businesses, and so they're not just, they're not just street legends. They had all kind of legitimate businesses and this, that, and the third. Plus, they tied the Pops in, I think, with a lot of other people down there in Memphis that helped.
People like them all over the United States, because they helped a lot of people down in Memphis. You understand? I'm talking about, there's a lot of people know the Bobos down south.
Yeah, they hooked back up again with the old man in the 90s when he was
Yeah. Like I said, they was getting big money for years, and pimping was their thing.
So there was this nexus of cases, the Bovan case in 90, the Woods family in 91, this guy named Jim Townsend in 92, another guy out of Florida, Eric Antonio Parker in 91. One of America's biggest TV stars, Steve Harvey, also has a connection to Memphis to his wife Marjorie, whose last name before she took Steve Harvey's was Woods. Before that, her last name was Townsend. Not to get into celebrity gossip, but it's interesting that Marjorie Harvey's first husband, Jim Townsend, he got caught trying to buy 40 slabs. He got a life in the feds, though a few years ago, he came home after serving about damn near 30 years. He got out, was able to get some of the time back. And then her next husband, Donnell Woods, who was the brother of infamous Kingpin Ronnie Woods. Well, Ronnie Woods and his brothers were all doing their thing. She married him next, and that's who Lori Harvey's father probably is. And Woods family are probably the most infamous street family in Memphis history. And they were big players in Memphis up until just a few years ago. And then an Atlanta area DEA agent told my buddy Scott Bernstein over at GangsterReport.com that Yo Gotti's plug, though I'm not sure when, was Ronnie Woods. Now, this could just mean Gotti was somebody seen interacting with them who seemed like he might have been a dealer, but, he never got indicted or anything. Big Jook did.
For the second year in a row, Chevy Equinox.
With the Woods, I don't know. Now, Ronnie Woods' brother Darnell is the one who married Marjorie. Ronnie Woods' Martini Room in Hickory Hill was a rowdy hot spot. Woods got indicted back in 91 and went to federal prison with his brothers. Then in